Raising the Banner, episode 13. Garrett, we're almost to 21. Don Tottingham, Garrett Kaloje with you. We're back at it after a bye week, if you will, last week.
Yes.
Schedules got a little screwy last week. It was really weird. You'd think the damn holidays are coming up. Garrett, how the hell are you?
Yeah, you think the holidays are coming on? You know what? We're doing good. There's a lot of commotion in the Kaloje household over here. There's parents are moving stuff around. New furniture's coming in. New carpets coming in. It's been a challenge for sure, and it's been a challenge, but it's a nightmare that's about to end, which is fantastic.
Well, that's good. That's good. And then Garrett, I understand that you potentially have a new job. This is interesting.
Yes, I have a position as of now. Waiting to hear back next week from a company that I interviewed with later on this past weekend. But there's going to be a high likelihood that I'm heading to South Bend, Indiana to start the year, and would be training in the Chicagoland area for 6 months for a new position of mine with a new company. So very excited to start out there. And if Connor Bedard wants to call me or sponsor the show, by all means, we'd love to have him on.
If Connor Bedard wants to come out there, I love it. I like the confidence, though. Well, congratulations, sir. That's really good news. So I'm glad to hear that.
Of course. And I know you've had yourself a crazy week as well with a lot of personal news as well that I'm sure, if you want to share or not, that's...
So we decided to get stupid and be adults and buy a house. And so we're within the midst of getting that deal complete. Hoping to have that closed around January 2nd. Now, granted, it's only just a tick up the road, literally 1.1 miles away from our current location, so that's good news. So we're not going to be that far away. So for that, I'm excited. So we don't have to move too far. But what a fiasco! if you've never bought a house before, it's just this is my second one, and this will be my wife's third. So it's wild. It's quite the journey. It's a journey, Garrett. It's a journey. We'll call it a journey that makes you drink hard liquor. So, cheers to that. But anyway, yeah, good stuff going on. Honestly, we really like the place. It'll be good for us, and my son will be able to. He'll be have his pool back and all that stuff. And by the way, since this is Christmas time, Mr. Kaloje sent me a gift that arrived this afternoon. Courtesy of the Detroit Red Wings, by the way. Here you go. Ready?
Two. Take a cheese. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I just sent it to you, yes.
Yeah, bingo bango. Holy mackerel. My Mickey Redmond bobblehead doll. This is probably the coolest thing ever. Mickey Redmond in a flannel with a hockey stick, his headset on, and it says bingo bango and holy mackerel. Are you kidding me? This is awesome. Thank you, sir, for getting that to me. I really, really appreciate that. I know you went above and beyond for it, so...
thank you. Have a good night. You as well.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. No, I think. Don't thank me, if you will, sir. Thank the fine marketing team over at the Detroit Red Wings Hockey Club for coming up with the idea.
Yes.
They were the ones that wanted to come up with that amazing creation that you now have in your possession. There's a little extra logistics for sure that I had to work out, but once would have probably been there a few days sooner. But hey, you know what? Got there safe and sound, and we love ourselves the United States Postal Service here at Raising the Banner. They took care of that package, and glad it made it safe and sound.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that. My wife still wants the gravy boat, but I'm like, you know what? That's just going to be for another day. I don't know what to tell you. That's just going to have to be for another day.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is that the gravy boat's nice, it's fantastic, but those things are quite pricey in the secondary market. I'm
on eBay they were going for like $250. That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't think it's going to be that much, and then you look up and you're like, I just spent $50 on a gravy boat.
$250. $250.
Oh God.
Like it's no joke, man. $250. That's what they're going for on eBay. It's unbelievable. So,
and then you're sleeping on the couch. So then,
I mean, yeah. So, yeah. But anyway, that's good stuff. By the way, getting into the show, we'll start off with our quick college hockey update. Now, the Michigan Hockey Club has been on a bit of a slump. And in fact, they had lost 3 straight. They had swept in Minnesota the prior week, and being shut out in both games in Minnesota out there in Minneapolis. So don't you know? Came home to play Wisconsin, and then got shelled again. Got shut out in Friday night's affair 2-0 to the Badgers. But then we were able to rebound and knock off the Badgers 3-2 in overtime on Saturday to redeem themselves and get off the schneid. So, you know what? It happens. That's part of college hockey, I guess, and they worked their way through it. Now, on the flip side of that, Michigan State, however, Garrett, they went up there to Minnesota to take on those Golden Gophers and got a 4-3 shootout victory. Technically, it goes down as a tie. The extra point goes to Michigan State because of the shootout. And then Michigan State pulled the win out on Saturday night 5-3 there against those Golden Gophers and sweep them, the number 1 team in the land, as a matter of fact. And that will pole vault Michigan State into the number 1 spot in your top 20, as they are now 13-2-1. They take over the number 1 spot in the land, just ahead of Boston College, who is at number 2. Minnesota slides to 3. Maine falls to 4. Maine goes up to 4 from 5, where Denver, they flip-flop. Denver's there at 5. Western Michigan, 10-3-1, is at number 6 in the land. You have Providence slide in there at number 7, and they stayed there. Colorado College with a big weekend against Denver slides in from 10 to 8. Michigan goes down from 8 to 9. They lose 1 spot. They're 11-6-1. UMass Lowell is now 10. So that's your top 10. Michigan State, Boston College, Minnesota, Maine, Denver, Western, Providence, Colorado College, Michigan, UMass Lowell. The next set, 11th, is Minnesota State, followed by St. Cloud State. BU, which is kind of surprising. Now, they did lose some talent, obviously, at 9-6-1. Ohio State's there at 14. North Dakota's 15. Cornell, Dartmouth, Quinnipiac, Arizona State, and Clarkson are your top 20. Wisconsin is in the others receiving votes. They're down there around 25th right now, and that's really about the highlights right there of the college hockey rankings. One surprise, Garrett, I guess I don't see in there, is the Lake Superior State Lakers. I kind of thought they might break in to at least the others receiving some votes. They have not. So,
yeah,
interesting. Michigan,
they had a strong showing. I mean, they were on the road this last weekend, and our friend of the show, Matt Pocket, was, I believe they were at Minnesota State this weekend. They, they played pretty well. I mean, they're a gritty team. I mean, the CCHA is a very gettable conference. It's a conference that, anybody can win. And I thought that they'd be able to, it looks like they're finally starting to put things together. And yeah, you would think that they would have had a couple votes out there. And, maybe it's the disrespect. I don't know. Maybe Matt Pocket needs to call somebody at the CCHA.
I don't know. But I just thought it was interesting because I had thought that, I thought Lake State would at least get in the other receiving votes, but they're not. I mean, you have an Arizona State at 19 is 8-7-1, and Quinnipiac's 8-6-1 at 18. So I know the records. It's more, college hockey is more about who you play and who you've matched up against. So I get that. But yeah. I mean, Lake State did go on the road to start the year at Michigan State, and damn near stole a point in the first game. Now, of course, the second game, Michigan State handled business, but that was the number 1 team in the country. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're missing there. Maybe I'm just a homer, which is fine.
Well, I mean, we're gonna, we have still a second half of the year, and typically for college hockey, I mean, you just like with a lot of college sports, typically the second half of the season, is more predicated on conference play. So they're going to have a lot more games with Northern Michigan. They're going to have a lot more games with Michigan Tech. They're going to have a lot more games with, teams within their own conference, which is fantastic. I'm hoping we can get Matt on in the next 2-3 weeks to maybe we can talk about this. We can kind of, now I'm in the understanding, Don, that most, if not all of these college hockey teams are away for the holiday break because all of them have, either taken all their exams or are going to take all of their exams this week. And I think it would be nice to have him on just to kind of explain, because I think that's really where the season comes in, right? Because now the college season shifts to hyperdrive. You're trying to fight to get to the Frozen Four.
Yeah.
It becomes a little bit different.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think with that being said, you have, this is kind of like the halfway point of the season, if you will, for college hockey. I mean, this is kind of, okay, we know what we got. Are we moving forward? Are we having to rebuild? I mean, what's the deal? So you kind of know what you have right now in the college land. So, only playing on the weekends, is a little bit of a detriment. But look, you know what you have. You've played some really good teams, and like Michigan and Michigan State have done. Lake Superior State's obviously done that. They had to do it a little bit earlier. But to your point, it's the halfway point. It's time to regroup, and it's time to hit that stretch run, because when you come back from holiday break, you kind of get into the thick of it, and you basically have about 8 weeks left, and then it's Big Ten championship time, or conference championship time. So it's put up or shut up time now for college hockey. So to your point, it is league play, and depending on how the teams do, or who they have left over from World Juniors, which by the way starts on the 26th, already a week from this Thursday, which is crazy. So. Always my own. That's one. Garrett, you know me very, very well. And I don't know the folks that listen to us or not, but I'm a huge fan of the World Juniors tournament. It's one of my favorite tournaments in all of the land, followed by the Memorial later on in May. But the World Juniors to me is just it's a halfway point showcase of the talent within the junior level from a global standard, from a global perspective. It means everything to these guys. And even the girls, too, because they do have the women's tournament, too. And it means everything to these guys. It puts them on the Garrett, you know this. You've watched the World Juniors Championships as much as I have over the last, what have we known each other, 12 years? And this tournament that's coming up next week is how many players have actually made themselves something in the World Juniors tournament that end up getting drafted the same draft season. You probably can't even name the guys' names right now. The one that sticks out to me the most, is Thomas Tatar. What he did with the Czech team in that tournament back in was that 2015?
No, it was probably closer to like 2009, 2010. It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but he was drafted. I don't think he was on anyone's draft board. And if he was way down the ranks. I think he was the player of the tournament in that tournament for the Czechs. And they finished, I think, 4th. They didn't even medal. And he ends up getting drafted by the Detroit Red Wings, and the rest is history. He was one of the better players coming out of that. So that just shows you, that's just one example of what the World Juniors can bring. And then it also showcases the talents like the Connor Bedards, the guys that we know are going to be there. And it just gives you an opportunity to see the youth that is in the junior leagues and kind of get a gauge on who's coming up next. It really shows that. It's a great showcase. It's players you probably...
For a lot of fans, Don, it's a great tournament because... For a lot of fans, Don, it's a great tournament because you get a chance to see a lot of these prospects that you normally wouldn't have access to, right? I mean, we over here in North America, we don't have access to a lot of the Swedish-born players,
Sometimes
right? So we wouldn't have access to, Axel Sandin Pelican. We wouldn't have access to Michael Franzi Nygaard or more inside. I remember watching those World Junior tournaments when, they canceled the one in 2020 and then they bumped it back, and Moritz Seider finally had his chance to go play in the World Juniors, and I remember watching Germany, and Germany had all these big young players, and it was fantastic.
That's a good point, because I know a lot of folks here, especially in North America, don't get a chance to see Pelika and Bronson Nygaard, and this will be an opportunity for you to do that, because with this tournament, this particular tournament, is going to be on the NHL Network, and every game's on there, one way or the other. And with that being said, this is your opportunity to see these guys, because I know some of you all can't watch the Swedish elite leagues, and you can't watch the games over in Germany and whatnot. Now, I have a special way of doing it that we'll leave for a different time. But the bottom line is, this gives you an opportunity, to your point, to see those here in North America. With the tournament is in Ottawa this year, is that right?
Yep. And the Americans are going to be defending gold, so we'll
also a good point.
and we'll see how that is. Now, this year's team's probably not going to be as strong as last year's was. I mean, last year's was one of those generational teams where,
right.
They had, I think it was like 10 or 11 first-round draft picks done. Like, it was fantastic. Like, you and I both know how good that team was.
Yep.
That was probably one of the best American teams ever. Maybe up there with that 2010 or 2007. America also had a really nice World Junior team as well. But this year, I think I still put my money on either Sweden or Canada to win the tournament this year. I think it's going to be either or. Do I think the U.S. has a chance to medal? I do, and I think it's just a matter of just a matter of how the U.S. plays.
I was worried about Canada coming into this until we watched the showcase, and again, the showcase was a step below what you'll see here at the World Juniors. However, what that tells me is there is and you and I have seen this too because we also watch the junior levels here, with the CHL and obviously the USHL and all that stuff, right? But
yeah.
I think we are seeing Canada's resurgence. I think there's a bounce back. You and I talked about this over the summer.
They're going to have, they're going to have likely 3 of the top 5 draft picks coming up in June playing on their roster, most notably led by Mike Misa. He's up in it's Mike Misa. He's up in Saginaw, so not too far up the road from myself.
Yep.
He was given I call it the Connor Bedard rule now, but he was given that exceptional status at 15. So he played for Spirit when he was 15 years of age.
Yep.
He's going to be playing in that tournament, so I think a lot of people will be excited to see him play. I know for the U.S., the presumptive number 1 pick, James Hagens, who's playing at Boston College, is going to be playing in that tournament. And he's actually a very strong center iceman. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like a John Tavares, I guess, with the way he plays his game. Just a very strong, skilled player that I think has really good feel for the puck, good skating around the net. Like he does everything right. I think a lot of people will be wowed by him.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Again, this is the difference from some of the tournaments that Don and I have talked about before is that these kids don't, once they turn 18, they can either get drafted, play professionally, or they'll go play college hockey. And if you're under the age of 20, you have a pool of players that can't qualify for the U18 team anymore, but can qualify for the U20 team. So you'll have a lot of the America's best players be playing for college hockey, maybe the AHL. Very rarely do you get some players that'll go play in the NHL that will go play for Team Canada. Or not Team Canada, but Team Canada is known to kind of have a few of those guys that will be, maybe second, third, fourth line players on their team that they'll loan out for the tournament and then come back home. So it's a little rare to see that on the NHL side, but for the most part, it's a fantastic tournament. One of the best things to really go through the holiday season. A lot of big shoes to fill this year with Team USA and, where they're at. It'll be exciting again to see Trey Augustine. Hopefully he'll be the goalie of the tournament this year and steal things. And
should be, yeah.
And Don, we'll be locked in. I'm pretty excited this year.
And the best part is if you don't get along with your family, you can sneak off into the room and watch some games, because they usually start around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it'll run through about, 10 o'clock. So it's an opportunity for you to slide away from the relatives you don't want to speak to and watch some hockey. So it's good hockey too. It's not like it's this rundown tournament. It's just a great tournament to watch from start to finish. There's usually some surprises, as per usual, and you're going to see. There's really, typically in this tournament, Garrett, there's usually not a team that's just awful. Like when we go to the Olympics, there's a team that slides in there because they end up qualifying in there and just get pounded like a tent steak in the Olympics, right? And in this tournament, you don't have that. So, and if you do, you're not going to be there. You're not long for the tournament because you're going to get regulated. So,
and Don, maybe I'll tease something here for next week or maybe over the holidays, but I'll tease something. You brought up a really good point about the Olympics and international competition, and it has something to do with Italy 2026 and NHL participation. And I'll talk to you about it off air.
Okay.
I'll post the question also on our social medias at Raising Banner on X.
Yes.
I'm going to create an Instagram and Facebook page. We're going to get that going. Hopefully over the holiday we should have that up and running. And we'll get you all involved as well. And I think and I think you'll like the topic. I think you'll like kind of where we're going there. So
I like it.
a little bit of a teaser, I guess, for some people with where we were at, Don. And again, we could talk about the World Juniors for 3 hours. And
I could.
You know,
I
we'll-
could sit here. I could go Matt Pocket on you and talk about the World Juniors. I mean, it's just, and that's a tease as well, because we're going to try to get Pocket on before Christmas. That's like a stocking stuffer, if you will. But it's usually that
Ooh.
stocking stuffer that like bulges out of the stocking, and you know it's something badass in there, and then
Yes.
you pull it out of the stocking, and you're like, shit, that should have been like the main present. But that's what Pocket is. That's what he does. And as you know, as Garrett said last time, you just wind him up and let him go. And that's what we do with Matt. We love him. I've known Matty Daddy for a long time. He's a great friend of mine. I'd do anything for the guy, and great guy. We love having him on. And so we're hoping to do that one more time during the Christmas break to give you a little bit of pumpkin pie with your ham. So I don't know if you have pumpkin pie with Christmas dinner, but some people do.
Hey,
I mean, whatever.
Take that extra scoop of ice, scoop of ice cream, and enjoy that.
Speaking of which, Garrett, today my son's school did a little PTO fundraiser at Culver's up the street. So I had to get myself an Oreo cement mixer. Oh, my Lord. If you've never had a Culver's Oreo cement mixer,
Yep.
son, you got to do an extra run, a couple laps on the treadmill after it. But that custard, she sticks with you. So go out to Culver's and
for
get you
those
one.
listening. For those listening who are not outside of the Midwest or in a state with a lot of Midwest transplants like Don is in Florida, Culver's is the most incredible restaurant I think I've ever had.
The butter, was it the butter?
Butterburger.
Oh, the Butterburger. Holy jumping Jehoshaphat. I'm here to tell you. It's just up the street from us, which is very dangerous. It's just inside the Walmart center, if you will, there, a little shopping plaza. So it sucks just enough to drive in there that keeps me away. If that sucker was on the main drag, I'd be like 450 right now, because that place, to your point, my wife loves the cheese curds. Son, if you have not been to a Culver's, maybe they should be the sponsor. But if you have not been to a Culver's, I'm here to tell you, you've at least got to go try the cement mixer. And then when you're trying the cement mixer, you're going to be in line, and you're going to smell the cheese curds, and then you're going to smell the French fries and the Butterburger. Holy smokes, you're not leaving. So,
yes,
I think I built it up. Now I'm hungry. Had one of those, and so get you a little bit more ice cream this time for Christmas. I mean, hell, you only get Christmas once a year, right? So, but Garrett is driving, by the way. So if you hear things in the background of like horns and stuff, he is not on camera, but he is driving the mean streets of Metro Detroit, and not sure where he's going. He might be driving to Flint for all we know. But the bottom line is he is on the road. He is driving safely. He's using his blinker, as you can tell, which is a very, very good job, Garrett. So, way to go. Way to be responsible. You're like a 10%er, because like 10% of the people use their blinker now. So,
I've
hat's
noticed
off to
that. I've noticed that, especially this time of year, because people get a little lazy this time of year.
Yeah.
But But Don, things are, as people are settling down, if you will, for the conclusion of the 2024 calendar year. Things are heating up in the National Hockey League, Don. They're full steam ahead. I know we're getting towards a dead period for trades where the league will not allow trades, I believe,
after the 23rd.
We're recording this on Monday night.
Yep,
we're recording this on the 29th. Well, we're recording this on Monday night.
Yep.
And I believe on the 18th they are not allowed to.
Oh, that's right. It's a full week
initiate
now.
any trades.
That's a full week now. You're absolutely correct. It is a full week now. It used to be the Monday before the holiday, but now it is a full week. It is a full week. So it's called, what do they call it? They used to call it the dead period, to your point.
The holiday freeze, I think.
The holiday freeze. That's exactly what it's called. So basically what they don't want is someone getting traded on Christmas Eve and find coal in their stocking and find out they're going to Ottawa, right? So that's nothing against Ottawa. It was just on my mind.
But
yes, you can't do that. So that freezes from the 18th through, I believe, the 26th. And so
correct, and then games will start up again on the 27th.
Correct.
The NHL and the NHLPA have a negotiated 3-day window.
That's it.
On Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then on Boxing Day to our neighbors in the north. They enjoy that. There will be no games that happen that day, and then the teams will travel and begin play as soon as the 27th. in their respective cities.
It's so interesting the NHL does this, but the NBA and the National Football League both have games on Christmas Day and the day after. And, the NBA has 6 games, I think, on Christmas Day. The NFL has 2, and they're going to have 2 more on the 26th. And the NHL doesn't do it, and they don't do it on Thanksgiving either. They just do not participate in that. New Year's Day is a different situation, but for the main holidays, the NHL has historically not played on those days, and I think it's a testament to what the NHL does for their players. It's interesting. It's kind of like baseball used to do. Like 4th of July used to be a spectacle in Major League Baseball, and now they've really dialed that back. Like sometimes there's teams that don't even play on the 4th of July now. It's really bizarre. The NHL is really the only one that has said, you know what, we're not playing, and we're taking not just the day off, we're taking 3 days off. And my hat's off to the NHL for doing that. My hat's off to it. Why try to compete with it? And the bottom line is, it gives the players a little bit of a break. I mean, for the last, month and a half, guys have been playing 3 games in 5 nights, sometimes 4 games in 7, like back-to-back weeks. Take 3 days off. Get away from it for a little while. I think it's a good thing. It's a good reset. And you kind of saw it last year, I think, with the Red Wings. When they came back from the Christmas break, that's when they got hot. They got hot in January. So maybe it's a precursor. Maybe we're going to get hot now, Garrett. That could be good. But to your point.
Yeah. And
going back to the hot stove, we had some trades, and some big names have been moved, which, Garrett, I think it's a little early for some big names to be moved in the NHL right now. But Jacob Trouba going from the New York Rangers to the Anaheim, can we call them Mighty Ducks? The Ducks, in exchange for a handful of pucks, basically, from the Ducks. And so my question to you, Garrett, I kind of thought Anaheim was going after it. I'm like, okay, they're going to bolster up that back end. They've got an okay offense. They have some decent goaltending. I'm thinking, hey, you know what? They think they're still in this thing, even though they're 10 points back in the Pacific. I thought they were making a move for it, right? And, okay, The Ducks are kind of coming on. And then all of a sudden they're like, you know what? Now that we got Trouba back here, we're going to move Cam Fowler. And this is a full, now in my opinion, and you even said this, a full-on rebuild as they move Cam Fowler to the St. Louis Blues for Tim Biakabatuka's son. The other direction. So
he's the son. No way. I was going to ask you that. That name sounded really familiar. I did not know that.
Yes, that is Tim Biakabatuka's son. And so, yeah. So there you go. And so the St. Louis Blues get Cam Fowler. Now, the Blues are a team now, I think, that are putting it together and could be a surprise. Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, is talking about the St. Louis Blues. And I'm here to tell you right now, that team is fierce right now in the Central. They played a hell of a game the other night against the Dallas Stars. They earned a point. They should have won that game. They ended up losing in overtime. Remember, this is a Dallas team that was in the Western Conference Finals last year against the Edmonton Oilers, right? And that was a team that could have probably won that series if they had a little bit more firepower. Dallas is not bad. St. Louis is up and coming, and they've just hired Jim Montgomery, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, from the Boston Bruins as their head coach. Watch out for the St. Louis Blues, because the Western Conference, in my opinion, is much weaker than the Eastern Conference, and it's not going to take much to get you back into contention in the West this year. So, Garrett, I think with Cam Fowler and him kind of changing scenery there to St. Louis, I know it's not Anaheim in January, and I get it, but St. Louis is going to play some damn good hockey coming down the stretch here. There might be a team you may not want to see on your schedule, like the Red Wings will see them, ironically, this coming Monday, the 23rd. So, Garrett, what does this mean for the Anaheim Ducks? Does this mean this is a full rebuild now? Are they pulling the plug on this? Is this a rebuild for the Ducks?
I mean, not only is it a rebuild, I think they fully have cemented themselves as a seller there. Pat Verbeek, old friend Pat Verbeek is trying to push all of his chips in, if you will, when it comes to the team and the atmosphere and just kind of getting picks and really not caring what happens to certain players. Like, I guess the one thing I'm confused by, because I'm confused by it as you got a 4th round pick back, you gave up a 2nd round pick.
Yeah.
or the other way around. Like, you basically gave up a decent amount to get a player that's $8 million, and you were one of the few teams that could eat the cap space. And I mean, truthfully, Pat Verbeek's just wheeling and dealing to try and get picks. He's trying to go full on Steve Yzerman 2019. That's okay because the Ducks need it, but I think that Verbeek has kind of drawn his line in the sand that they haven't played as well as they thought this year, and they made moves in the offseason to get a little bit better, a little bit meaner, maybe a little bit more physical, and it hasn't really paid off as much as they thought. Trevor Zegras hasn't been as good as people thought he was going to be this year.
Yeah.
And that's kind of another revelation there as well too. And I'm wondering where that sits because really to me it's kind of just a lateral move. Trouba and Fowler are really the same player. I mean, Fowler is probably on the back end of his career. He's probably in the last, I'd say, maybe 1 to 3 years of his career. And you're really not going to see him get much better than what he is right now. Trouba's got 2 years left, and then basically he's going to be a free agent.
Correct. Now, the Ducks still have a guy by the name of Gudas on the squad, and I believe this is the second of his 3-year deal with the said Ducks. Do you think there's a chance the Ducks trade him either at the trade deadline?
You there?
Yeah, I'm here. You got me? I got you. I think we may have lost Garrett. I think he may have hit one of those dead zones. But
my Uconnect my Bluetooth was not working.
Damn Bluetooth. Do you think they would trade Gudas?
I was transitioning from the car to my phone, and then I'm going to get back on the computer here shortly. So I did make it safely to where I needed to go. So those worried about my safety, I did get back safely.
So Garrett, but do you think the Ducks would move Gudas at the deadline? If this is a full-on rebuild, you got to think this is a guy that's going to be, has got to be a guy that they would move because you got to think the pieces you would get back with him would be something that they could use at during either the draft or moving forward. I wonder because there's going to be teams that want physicality, and Gudas definitely brings that. And it's a guy that I wanted the Red Wings to pick up, and I'm wondering if old Patty Verbeek would give old Steve Yzerman a ringy-dingy. And we could pick up a guy like Gudas because I think he would change the whole dynamic of the Red Wings back end with him out there.
Yeah, I definitely would think that that's a possibility. I mean, I think, for being honest, Don, I think there's always a possibility. And I think you saw like some of the moves, for example, when Trouba was moved, you saw some of the rumors you'd seen even this summer, that he was trying to acquire Trouba, and then it was shot down. And, there's a lot of that stuff kind of behind the scenes. And it was very messy, I guess, at that point.
Yep.
And I'll say this. I mean, I think I guess the one thing that I would, if I'm a betting, and I'm not much of a betting man, but if I were to kind of tell people why, a Radko Gudas trade would happen before, say, Jacob Trouba right now, would probably be two things. I think one, he's a little bit older, so I think it's a little bit more, even though that might not be always the best thing for it, I think sometimes that can be better just because it's it might be a little bit better for some teams that are looking for a short-term fix, which I think the Wings are. And then I think, two, this is a big thing, his cap hit, Don, is significantly less than what Jacob Trouba's was.
He's my
getting
point.
Roughly $4 million per season. I think for a lot of those teams that are stuck in the middle, it's
$3 million a season.
A little more palatable.
Yeah, it's $3 million a season, my friend, and that's what I mean. Because
it's a lot more palatable for teams who are in the middle.
Absolutely, and that's why I think the Red Wings are in the play for that, because you could move a guy, potentially that you could swap. Like, for example, and I'm just picking on Hall for example here, right? But you can move Hall, and that would be basically a swap contract. It'd be a $3 million player for a $3 million player. Like I just think that would be. That's something that Yzerman could do. That's something you could build on, because I think they would extend Gudas, honestly, at least another year, and he would bolster the back end. That's what I mean. We'd have a big physical guy back there. And again, this is all hypothetical. There's nothing with anything with this. I'm just making it up. But it's interesting because now the Ducks are starting to move defensive players, and Cam Fowler at one time, just a few short years ago, was a guy the Anaheim Ducks had put on their non-touchable list. So it's interesting.
That's right.
So now I'm not saying they've given up on him, but I don't think Fowler wanted to be there through yet another rebuild, and it sounded like the Ducks were going to do that, and it's clear they're doing that now. And I don't think he wanted to stay for another rebuild. He wanted to move on where a chance where he could win the Stanley Cup. He obviously has a much better opportunity in St. Louis. So
he's played almost 1,000 games with the Ducks, and I mean that's a guy that's played on Olympic teams,
correct.
World Junior teams. Like that's a guy that's kind of earned the right to have a chance to play for something, a little bit more bigger than himself. And I think that's a pretty important thing. One thing I will say about this, though, is, getting back to the Trouba thing, because I was walking into my apartment.
Yeah.
There were still people out there, even the Dave Pagnotas and Darren Dragers that were saying Yzerman was calling Chris Drury, and they were trying to get a third team together to get the cap to work, and it just couldn't work.
Yep. No, I know Yzerman was making a big push for that. So, and I think as the cap hit would have been tough, but I think if they could have got the third team in there, they probably would have been able to pull it off. The problem with the Trouba deal is, Garrett, and you and I kind of talked about this off air. He hasn't worked out anywhere he's gone in the NHL at this point. Like he was, didn't work out in Montreal, and now it didn't work out with the Rangers. And now he's shipping off to Anaheim, who basically don't really have a culture. They're on a full rebuild. I'm starting to think that this guy might be a little bit of a cancer in the locker room or something, because he just hasn't worked out anywhere he's gone. And granted, the Red Wings wanted to get him. They've been wanting to get him twice. But maybe there's a silver lining to it. And maybe he's just not the guy you want in the locker room. I don't know. But it just seems to me everywhere he goes, it doesn't pan out. It's almost like a Matt Duchene kind of thing. And I don't know. Maybe this is his spot. I don't know. But to me, Garrett, he's not worked out anywhere he's went. He's always wore out his welcome within 4 or 5 months. I don't know what it was with the Rangers, but there was some ill feelings right there with him and the Rangers, with Trouba and the Rangers. So something's up with that. I don't know what it is. I mean, that's a hot take. And I'm just kind of looking at it from 50,000 feet, but it hasn't really worked out anywhere. Now there's rumors that the Ducks want to move him possibly to Toronto, which is interesting. So, and again, that's for Beek unloading, getting a player, and then being able to cash in, right? It's almost like he bought in low there on the old stock market. It went up $15 in 2 days, and he's going to shut it down and sell it off. I don't blame him. I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of where we're at. And speaking of the Rangers, Garrett, that team has fallen off the wagon. I believe they're 2-9-1 in their last 12. What's going on with the Rangers?
It just seems like they're lost. It seems like they lost the Eastern Conference Final last year. It looks like they were just... Looks like they put all their chips in for that, and they're not getting the kind of goaltending that people thought. They aren't getting the quality goaltending that they did last year from Shesterkin, which may have saved them a lot of time. And I'm not saying that Igor Shesterkin was not the end-all, be-all last year, I think, in terms of he was good. Clearly he was the number one. He was the answer. He was what the Rangers kind of rallied around. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're trying to say, oh, well, it was only him and not the team effort, I mean, they've got a complete offense over there. They've got one of the best, I think, teams and power plays in the league. I think, honestly, and I truly think it's a combination of team got off to a rough, or is hit in a rough patch right now. They're trying to change things up, and I think that their captain was just not happy with how he was being treated by the general manager, Chris Drury. And I think that he let that kind of be publicly known. And when you let those things manifest itself and you let your business be everyone else's business, it tends to bring everybody else down. And that's, I think, probably what it was.
Yeah, and I watched the game on Saturday when they hosted the LA Kings. And again, the Kings are a great squad. I'm not trying to take anything away from the Kings. The Kings put up a 5-burger on them in a period, in a little over a minute of the second period, and won that game 5-1. And they actually chased Shesterkin. So you're right. They have lost themselves, and now they're floating out there Chris Kreiger trade rumors. Now, I don't know where he would end up, where he might go, that kind of thing, but a power play specialist, to say the least. And, Garrett, it sounds like the Rangers are open for business.
Yeah, and I've heard they would even listen to offers on Adam Fox as well.
That's
which
crazy
I think
to
would
me.
be.
That's a complete blow up. If you're going to move Trouba, Kreider, and Fox, you're chopping away at the foundation at this point. Like, I'm a little surprised. I understand, teams go through slumps, but there's something culturally wrong with that team if that's what they're willing to move. I mean, if you're telling me you're going to move your captain, your associate captain, and then arguably your best defenseman, I don't know. I mean, to me, it sounds that, if they didn't sign Shesterkin to the 10-year, $18 bazillion contract, he might be on the chopping block, but no one's going to take that contract. But at the end of the day, Garrett, are they going to shutter this thing and just start over? That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what it looks like. I mean,
It's
which
crazy.
is wild to me that they were, it's wild to me that they were 2 wins away from a cup final last year.
2 years in a row, though, and 2 out of 3 years. And I can't even fathom that. And that's just bizarre to me. That I kind of watched the Red Wings played the Rangers earlier this year, right? And they just did what they always do against us. They go on the damn power play, they score, they beat us 5-3. The Red Wings just don't even. And then all of a sudden, not less than 5 weeks later, this team is chucking aside the whole thing. Like, I have never saw a team. I swear to you, Gary, I've watched this game, the NHL, since 1986, and we know what the league was like that back then, right? I have never seen a squad just say, screw it, we're throwing in the towel, and we're starting over again. I've never seen this before. In all the years I've watched the NHL, I've never seen a team. Yeah, it's a little bit of a slump, but hell, it's 82 games. It's a sprint, not a race. And hell, if they got into the playoffs, even as a wild card, no one's going to want to play them. Man, I'm not saying it's a mistake. I don't know what's going on there, but I just never saw a team just say, you know what, we were within 2 games of a Stanley Cup final, 2 out of the last 3 years, and now we're going to move on? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's very confusing. I think it's very confusing in some ways for sure. I mean,
but then you have a
makes
team,
no sense because they're so close. I mean, they're so close and yet so far away.
So close, and it's like, and then you have a team like Nashville who over the summer went in all in. I'm talking every chip on the table. It was pushed to the middle, baby. We went all in, right? Nashville all in, and now guess what? All about a fire sale now. That team has got off to an absolutely horrendous start. 2 points right now, I believe, ahead of the Chicago Blackhawks. I'll get the standings up here in a minute, and we'll talk to the standings here in a few minutes. But this is a Nashville team that had extremely high expectations with what they did over the summer, right? The Steven Stamkos stuff, right? Obviously. All the trades they made to bring in that talent, and the team just has not played well. Has not played well at all. They did get a decent win against Dallas the other night, but then turned it around with a slumper at home. And it's like, they got you kind of scratching your head, like, what is going on with this squad? Like, it's not gelling. And you got to wonder, is Nashville going to start selling off some of these pieces to perhaps start over again?
And you're starting to see 30 games in, those teams that might end up doing that. And I'm curious to see as we go along and the standings are getting closer and closer to kind of letting itself play out. We're going to see what teams we didn't expect to sell. And I think Barry Trotz is kind of hinting at the fact that he might do this. He might actually blow that thing up.
Well, with Nashville, they're getting to a point because they're so far down the standings. For them to get into the playoff picture, they're going to have to play 700 hockey the rest of the way. Garrett, you're talking to 7 to 10 wins. 7 wins out of every 10 games you're playing the rest of the way. It's not. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's foreseeable. 65 is tough to do, but 70, you're at the point where I don't think it's unless 2 teams tank, which I suppose could happen in the Western Conference. I don't know. To me, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get back in the playoff picture, especially now that you have the St. Louis Blues who have kind of just hung around there, and now they're picking up some pieces and putting something together there. You know, you already have Colorado, who's I still think good enough to make it in. Dallas is probably right there, and Winnipeg's the class of that division. And then you can't forget about the Minnesota Wild. So that's a team that has far exceeded everyone else's expectations. So Nashville, they're down there swimming around with the Blackhawks right now in the bottom. You can't get out of that. So they're getting to a point now where it's like they need to move some guys and start over the summer again or something. But again, I told you guys at the beginning of the season, this is a Nashville team that is showing a desperation to win a Stanley Cup. And if they don't do it in the next couple of years, I'm not saying they're moving, but they might be moving because I don't know how much longer the fan base there is going to continue to support that team if it doesn't win. And being a 7 seed in the playoffs and getting bounced by Vancouver in the first round every year isn't going to fly. It's not going to fly anymore when you have teams like Carolina who are a couple hundred miles away going deep into the playoffs. You have Tampa Bay winning a Stanley Cup twice. Florida winning a Stanley Cup, right? St. Louis has won a Stanley Cup recently in 19. All those teams that are geographically around Nashville have all won, and they haven't made the finals but one time. That's a problem. And there's desperation in Nashville. And so I'm wondering how much further or how much longer they're going to wait. Because it sounds to me they're going to dump guys. And then, Garrett, on top of that, if you want to go back to the Eastern Conference, you have the Buffalo Sabres, who are 0-7-2 in their last 0-7-3, excuse me, in their last 10 games, and that's a team that is sent reeling. Now, the owner, Terry Pagula, who's also the owner of my Buffalo Bills, has traveled to Montreal today to meet with the team, and apparently everyone thought, ooh, this is going to be a shakeup, and it was the complete opposite. So you have a team like Buffalo who has high expectations again this year, right? This is a team that's just kind of fluttered around the bottom there with Ottawa and Detroit last year, and Montreal in that Atlantic division has now sunk back into that bottom side, Garrett, and seems to be okay with where they're at. Interesting on my part from the Sabres.
Yeah, and they a lot of people kind of thought carnage was going to happen, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know obviously, they very confusingly let the Wings back into that game.
That was bizarre.
Buffalo, and then Costa came in, and we can even. I know we're going to be up against it, not now, but I mean, if we can get it in, we can today, and if not, it's no worries. But even that, I mean, they let Husso bounce, and then they had Sebastian Costa come in, and just very strange how they just let Costa come in and all of a sudden just kind of acts like he's been there, and then they keep scoring, and then the Wings keep scoring, and it's just like this whole thing of, okay, what are we doing now? We need to probably play some defense, and yeah, we're not playing defense. It's like it fell apart, and I wasn't really sure why or how. And I guess to your point, Frank Saravelli, who used to be with Sportsnet, now I believe he's with the Daily Face-Off, which is also a social media website for hockey, with Cap and the news and things like that. He had said that sources indicate that the players met with the owner, Terry Pagula, and Kevin Adams, as you mentioned, and that the summary of the message was that they believe in the team. They think the solution is within the room. So the owner professed faith in Adams and head coach Lindy Ruff, and apparently told players that they shouldn't be expected to be traded, or at least a bigger trade to go forward. So we'll see how it is. I mean, you and I have had, you've watched a lot of hockey. I've watched a lot of hockey. I mean, you've got 10, a little more than 10 years on me just because of age. But I mean, you've seen this happen where they say that, and then a month later, things will change, and they'll push the panic button.
Right.
And
because if they end up being, to your point, if they end up being, 1-15-3, you got to think that something's going to happen. Like it's just,
if you end up losing, let's say if Buffalo closes out the month and they only win 2 of their next, let's just say they have 6 games left or whatever in this month, and they only get 2 out of a possible 12 points, and they head into, the Four Nations break looking like they're a sinking ship, then yeah, I think you're going to probably see a change, and you're going to see Pagula go against his word. But you're not gonna see that now. That's why I've always believed that it's not smart for any sort of owner or any sort of person, like that, to come out and say those things, because you're just setting yourself up for failure. And the one thing, Don, that I find interesting, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I really do think that this is a very interesting discussion, is like when the Sabres got sold to Terry Pagula, right? Yep. Or to Terry and Kim Pagula.
Mm-hmm.
And he bought that team. I mean, people had thought that it was going to be, daffodils and roses, and that they were going to be able to compete. And I think now you're looking at this thing where now they haven't even made the playoffs in, more than a decade and a half. And in the meantime, you've seen Buffalo in that, or not Buffalo, you've seen Florida in that time get new ownership and win a Stanley Cup. You've seen, Tampa get new ownership in that time and win a Stanley Cup. You've seen, newer ownership all across the league. You've seen two teams expand. You've seen one of them win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Like, where's the disconnect on that? And that's where I'm super confused by that, because you would think that with Pagula owning the team as long as he has, he would have figured something out along the way.
So to answer your question, I feel you see this in sports a lot when you have ownerships that own multiple teams within the same city. And in this case, the Pagulas also own the Buffalo Bills. Now, obviously the Bills run the city of Buffalo. There's no doubt about that. Everyone knows that, right? Bills Mafia to the hills. Buffalo can play a game in fucking Guam, and they would sell the goddamn place out. But everyone knows this,
yes.
Right? When you have Josh Allen, who in my opinion is the closest thing to pre-championship Michael Jordan in sports, it doesn't matter.
The second coming of Jesus, like he actually is Jesus reincarnated. So.
Perhaps. I mean, if you've seen his hair. So, here's the thing. When you have the same thing in Detroit, you've had the Ilitches who own the Red Wings since 1982. Excuse me. And then, let's guess it was probably around, 1999-ish, they bought the Detroit Tigers. And the Tigers were trash for years after the Ilitches owned them. They just didn't put any money into them. And then the Red Wings just kind of went on their thing. They won their cups. They continued through, the salary cap stuff in 06 and through 08 and won their cup there in 08. The Tigers make this miraculous run in 06, make the World Series, then get beat by the Cardinals, and the rest is history, right? And you've seen this kind of change. But there's never been a time where the two teams in parallel are championship caliber. When you have an ownership like this. And I personally think the Buffalo Sabres, for a lack of a business term, the Buffalo Sabres are a tax loop for the Pagulas to have the Bills. I just think that's what it is. They have the stadium there. They can get that. They have the Bills players go to the games. They draw when they do that. But outside of that, the team's been bad. They haven't done anything in over a decade. And it seems to me, based on this conversation in Montreal, that they're okay with that because they're drawing okay at home. And they just, Garrett, to me, they seem to be okay with that. I don't understand what the right and wrong is. But again, the Pagulas also were okay with the Bills losing about a decade ago for a long time as well. So it begs the question. I think the ownership can only support a winning culture in one side of the street to the other. I think that's the only way they can do it. And if the Bills ever slump and fall apart, maybe the Sabres come back up. But at this point, it's interesting because you have a Rangers team, as we mentioned, that was 2 games away from the Stanley Cup final. You have a Nashville team that overspent this summer. And then you have Buffalo, who's spent some money in the offseason, but had high expectations to make the playoffs, and they're not doing anything, while these other two are having garage sales on the weekends. Like, I don't... What the hell is going on in this league? Like, if of all the teams, if you would have told me, okay, Rangers, Nashville, Buffalo, who's selling? I'm like, Buffalo. And then they're saying they're not. It's like, I can't make heads or tails of it. And I don't know if it's a bluff. I don't know if it's just like, hey, get your shit together, Sabres. Let's try to win a couple games and get back into this. Because let's face it, the Atlantic Division, Garrett, If the Sabres continue to fall like they're falling, they're going to have to play 800 hockey to get back in the playoffs. That's damn near impossible. That's not going to happen. And that means you're going to have to beat teams like Toronto, Florida, Tampa, Boston, and beat them 3 out of 4 times.
Right.
No way it's that happening. No way in hell it's that happening unless this team starts snorting cocaine or something like that. That's the only way I can see them doing that. So, I'm sorry, but that's where Buffalo's at right now. And, our Red Wings are not far off from that either. And I'm not trying to say that we're any better because, Garrett, as you mentioned in that Buffalo game last week, the Red Wings brought in Sebastian Cossa after they were down 3-1 to the Sabres. I think it was 3-1 when he came in. And they bring Cossa in, and he kind of gets shelled real quick. And I had a problem with this because they had opportunities to start Cossa. In my personal opinion, that he should have started that game, but he was not awarded the opportunity to have his family come in and see him start an NHL game. Instead, he comes in there, has basically been sitting on the damn bench for 5 days in front of 2 games in which I thought he should have been in and played anyway. We didn't get any points in any of those. And then all of a sudden, the team's down 3-1, and Malone says, "Hey, Cossa, go out there and get him, big guy." And then he allows 2 goals, 2 shaky goals. You could tell he was nervous as hell. And then he settled in. To your point, he did settle in, got the 2 points, he got the shootout win, which was humongous. But the team came together for him. I think it kind of had a rallying cry in a way for it. And Garrett, my question was, why in the hell did the Red Wings wait and have Cossa sit on the bench for 7 days just to play Husso when they could have started Cossa at least 2 of those games? I'm not saying the Red Wings would have won them, but damn, let the kid get out there and play so he can get some ice time. And instead, he plays 3 out of 4 nights with Grand Rapids, comes here, sits there and eats hot dogs on the bench. He wasn't really eating hot dogs, but I'm just saying. He sits on the bench there for 5, 6, 7 days, and then gets shipped back off to Grand Rapids, and then he has a horrible night in Colorado. He did rebound the next night, but still, what's the point of calling him up at that point? Bring up Geilander or bring up Campbell at that point. Why screw with his psyche at that point? That was the damn thing I was worried about with Cossa with this team right now, was they were going to do just exactly that. Bring him up here, fuck with his mind, and then ship him back down. That's like, I don't understand the thinking with that. I don't know if it's a coaching decision. I don't know if it was a general manager decision. I'm not sure, but it kind of shows you the ineptitude with the Red Wings right now on what they're doing. Just blows my mind.
Well, I mean, and then you come out and you play the way you did against Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Now you. I mean, but then it was weird because then you kind of corrected yourself. Yeah, when the Wings are confusing me on that front. I think the thing with Cossa, like the thing with Sebastian Cossa, that I think the thing with Cossa, when you sit back, look at it, 10,000-foot view is they really didn't feel comfortable with him being in that situation. Maybe they thought that it was going to be a spark to the guys. It was, and honestly, maybe they just feel that. Maybe the front office looks at it as the optics of it. Playing a guy like that could be, you're giving up on a season. You have Jack Campbell down there. He should be up, which he was up obviously on Saturday.
Right.
Probably going to be up, I think, on Wednesday when you play the Flyers. Healthy and ready to go. It really didn't make sense why they did that. I think it was more of a panic move because he was the only goalie that really was available, and maybe Grand Rapids just had to have Campbell down there. Really, just kind of like it was just a safe base. Give the fans kind of something, or at least kind of give the team hoping that the team could kind of rally together and do what they did. I ended up winning a game, which is nice. You got a huge 2 points to keep yourself at least relatively.
Yeah, it was against the top team in the league.
You got yourself 2 points that at least keeps you relevant within the playoff hunt, and I think that that's super important for this team.
Yep.
And it just sucks because I wish it was a little bit different in that regard, because I kind of wish that you weren't in that position. But again, I mean, could we see him again this year? Maybe. Do I think he will be up again this year? Probably not. But I was a little perplexed by it too. I was perplexed by the fact that they weren't going to play him. Husso had one bad game in that stretch. Surprisingly, he played pretty well. I was a little worried that he was just going to kind of fall flat on his face. And, there's been a lot of other issues with the Wings this year, I think, other than the goaltending finally, which I think has been, one of those other things that
Agreed.
we were worried about. But, I mean, I'm not too worried about some stuff. I'm not really worried too much, Don, about
what happened with Costa. I mean, it's bad optically, sure, but I think that's just one of those things that, look, at the end of the day, they brought him up, he got the job done. Obviously, it's going to leave him wanting to taste of more, and I hope that he can bounce back from that in Grand Rapids. It kind of sounds like he did settle in again in Grand Rapids, but
He did.
it goes from there.
Yeah, and so it's just it's bad optics. I think that's the thing, and it's a team that obviously is under the microscope. Let's call a spade, and so right now kind of swimming around down there in the bottom of the wild card teams, and it's not been a good look. And Garrett, we're going to transition here just a little bit and kind of look to the future of the NHL here, and then we're going to wrap up with a standings update before we send you all back to your Christmas shopping. Word came out, Garrett, for us Floridians, that the Florida Panthers are due to host an outdoor game. Now, you're probably wondering, how in the bleep are the Panthers going to hold an outdoor game in Miami any time of the year, right? Well, they're going to play it at Lone Depot Park, where the Marlins play, and they're going to host the Florida rivals, the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I believe that's going to be next year. I don't know if it's going to be the Winter Classic, but it's going to be, I think, a Stadium Series game. That's what it sounds like. And that's going to be the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning. How cool, no pun intended, is that going to be? Did we lose Garrett? Oh, there he is.
No, you didn't. Sorry. No, I thought you were going on there. That's why I stayed a little bit silent. No, I think it'll be fun. Now you'll have all 30 teams that will have participated in an outdoor game. And I think that's and that's the end goal for the league, right? You want to get every team involved. You want to get every team to, play a part in this, you want every team to play a part in an outdoor game and feel special and be able to have the merchandise and, engage with the fans and, kind of show it where, in the elements that a lot of those players grew up in. Now, unfortunately, for a lot of people in South Florida, well, it's not really easy to obviously do outdoor hockey and.
So, and Garrett, I mentioned to you this on the phone the other day when we were talking about this. The original Panthers fans are from South Miami. The Panthers played the Miami Arena for, I want to say it was a good 8-9 years. So a lot of their fans, in fact, when they went to the Stanley Cup Final in '95, that was at the Miami Arena. So that was straight up downtown Miami. So a lot of their fans came from that area. Now, of course, they moved out to Sunrise, which is with traffic, it's about an hour and 10 minutes away. But that has been a great built-up area over there in Sunrise. But the bottom line is they're playing this game at Lone Depot, which is going to be North Miami, but it's over by the airport. So it's 35-ish minutes from downtown. So, and that's probably being nice. But the bottom line is it's going to be in that area where a lot of the Panthers fans started from. So I thought that was cool. And of course, they didn't have much of a choice, obviously. But I thought it was pretty interesting that we're going to be able to do that there and kind of get back to the roots, if you will, of the Florida Panthers. I think that's kind of paying back to the city of Miami of saying, hey, come on and kind of watch us here and not have to drive across town. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, of course, Tampa Bay could have done the same thing if, the Tropicana Stadium was still around or whatever, but who knows what's going to happen with that. Now, keep in mind the Lightning used to play at the Trop when they first came into the league. Fun fact. And so it'd be interesting. I'm curious to see how this is going to work in Miami. And to your point, all 30 teams have been in this. They've all had a shot at it. I think it's great. It's going to be great for the local festivities here in South Florida. So I'm really, really excited about it. Garrett, I'm half-assed interested in actually going there for it, just to be around it. Maybe not necessarily go to the game, but just to be around the festivities. I think it would be fun.
You know what? I'd kind of be with, we could work something out on that for sure. I'd kind of be interested in doing that, to be honest. I mean, I think it'd be kind of fun just to at least be curious about it and see
Come down and have some Cuban food with me, dude, and watch some hockey. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll go to South Beach first and then go down there later. It'll be a great time.
That's right. And now, Garrett, you had mentioned something about Kevin Weeks and talking about the NHL expansion.
No, the North American Hockey League is what it was.
North American Hockey League. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be very brief with this.
Yeah.
We did it out 4 hours ago, but North American Hockey League. I mean, North American Hockey League is trying to become one of the more preeminent junior leagues in the U.S. and in particular, in Canada. Sounds like they're trying to add 6 new teams so that they can fill out a Western division to kind of grow and give a lot of these kids who are playing hockey on the west side of the United States, give them a chance to, be able to play junior hockey and give those kids more options and availability. And I like seeing that option. Now, for those who don't know the NAHL, it's basically semi-pro hockey. It's kind of a step below the USHL, so it kind of doesn't really fall anywhere, really that high up, if you will, when it comes to the actual pyramid, if you will, for USA Hockey. A lot of those kids are still good players, but a lot of them go play college, so you might see a lot of those guys go play college after they're done playing in the NAHL, which is cool. A lot of those guys will play till they're like 19, maybe even 20. But truthfully, I do think that that does matter. And I thought it was just kind of curious to see. Again, nothing too serious on it. If obviously, if anything breaks next week, we can cover it again. But they're trying to create a Western division that's going to, kind of encompass some of those more hockey market areas. I just thought it was kind of interesting that they even highlighted Arizona as a market. So obviously, just would be a new team in the area because obviously the Coyotes have left and gone to Utah. But it looks like that we can cover it. I'd be curious to see next week if there's any updates, anything that's happening from there. This wouldn't happen for another 3 seasons, though, at least. So,
it takes a while to build that up.
Yeah,
it would take a while to build that up. It's not like something you could just kind of put into place next year. It's not that easy. I wanted to close the show, Garrett, real quick with a quick standings update in the NHL. Just to for the most part, most of the teams in the NHL have played at least 30 games. There's a handful that have not. However, in the Atlantic Division, you have Toronto in first place with 2 points up on the Florida Panthers in the same amount of games played. And then all of a sudden, the Boston Bruins have moved into number 3 in the Atlantic Division, 3 points back of Florida with an extra game on the Panthers. Moving over to the Metropolitan, Garrett, in my opinion, this is the surprise of the East right now is the Washington Capitals. They have 44 points in 29 games. They're 1 point ahead of New Jersey, who has 4 games ahead played of the Capitals, and they have 43 points right now. And then Carolina's there at 3 with 30 games in at 39 points. So that's my surprise right now is the Washington Capitals, playing very, very well. We haven't talked a whole lot about them, but that's a team that has been 8-1-1 in their last 10. I mean, what can you say? They've just been lights out. They've just been lights out. And thankfully, we haven't run into Washington yet, but maybe they'll cool off by the time we get to them.
It seems like Ovechkin has slowed down a little bit on the
Well, he hasn't played.
He got off to a torrid start.
He had a great start, then he broke his leg. He's still not back yet, so he'll be back strong. Now, here's your wild card teams. Your 2 wild card teams currently right now, if the playoffs were to start, would be the Tampa Bay Lightning as your first wild card team, and the team that's kind of come around is the Ottawa Senators. They would be the 8th seed right now, 7-2-1 in their last 10, and a 3-game winning streak right now for the Senators with 32 points, and a game in hand with the Philadelphia Flyers, who they're tied with technically in points. And then it's the Rangers, Penguins, Islanders, Blue Jackets with 29 points, and then the Red Wings with 28, Buffalo with 26, and Montreal and dead last at 25. So interesting there. The Red Wings, as you mentioned, with 28, but again, if you look at the standings, they're only 4 points out of that last playoff spot. So as bad as it's been, it's not time to jump off the cliff yet. Switching over to the Western Conference in the Central Division, the Winnipeg Jets, who was a team that, as we know, got off to a rip and roaring start, but then kind of cooled off a bit, which is what we expected, right? But they're back in first place there with 32 games in with 45 points. The Minnesota Wild are 1 point back, again, between the Wild and the Capitals by 2 surprise teams, I think, in the season right now. They have a game in hand with the Jets with 1 point back. They're 7-3-1 in their last 10. They've been red hot too. And then the Dallas Stars hanging around there with 36 points in 29 games. Dallas is just 18-11. A team that's just one night they're really hot. They're really, really good at home. They're awful on the road. And they've just been kind of even so far. So, I don't know. But I think Dallas is just, I don't know, maybe they're slowing up a little bit to save it for the rest of the season. It's hard to say. But they have some challenges coming up, too. So, in the Pacific, Vegas, no surprise there. They're in first place. The Kings 4 points back with a game in hand. And the Edmonton Oilers have kind of started to get it back together here. 8-2 and 1, or 8-2 in their last 10. They've won 5 straight. So the Oilers are back. Look out. I do think Edmonton's winning that division this year, Garrett. It takes them a little. They're kind of like an '86 Buick. It just takes them a little while to get going, and then once they get going, get out of the way. So it's look out for the Edmonton Oilers in that division. I think they're going to pass Vegas. I'm just not sold on Vegas. I know they're 7-2 and 1 in their last 10. They're really, really good at home, but they're a very average team on the road. So I can't buy into them yet. So I think Vegas' team's. I'm not saying they're not going to make the play. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying I expect them to be a wild card team. Anyway, speaking of the wild card in the Western Conference, the 2 wild card teams right now would be the Avalanche at 7 with 36 points, the Vancouver Canucks, who are hanging on by a thread right now to the last playoff spot with 35 points, 5-3 and 2 in their last 10. The Calgary Flames are tied with them with 35 points, but the Flames have just, again, they 3-5 and 2 in their last 10. Just it's been a struggle bus. And then the team that's kind of coming on, Garrett, a team that's hanging out there 2 points back of a wild card spot, is your Utah Hockey Club. 6-2 and 2 in their last 10. I'm telling you what, I watched them against San Jose. Now, I know San Jose is a team that's kind of on the rebuild a little bit. However, Utah is a club, Garrett, I like their game. I really like the way they play. And they have some really good talent. Of course, that was, as you know, was the Phoenix team or Arizona team from last year, so it's not really that big of a surprise. But that's a team that you might want to watch out for. And then we also mentioned the team below them in the standings they're tied with points, is the St. Louis Blues, also 6-2 and 2 in their last 10. So that's a team you want to watch out for, is the Blues, especially if you get them on the road. The Blues are really, really good away from St. Louis, at home trying to get back at it. The Kraken, 1 point back of St. Louis right now. That's a team that's kind of one night they're hot, one night they're not. So I'm kind of interested what the Kraken are going to do. I'm expecting them to kind of slip a little bit. The Sharks have been a little bit of a surprise at 7 in the wild card spot, 27 total points. A team, 5-5 over the last 10. They've been again. The Sharks have been good one night, bad the next night. Then it's the Ducks at 26, to be expected 3-6 and 1 in their last 10. The Chicago Blackhawks come in at 9th in the Western wild card, 3-7 and 0 in their last 10. And then dead last, Garrett, the Nashville Predators are 8-17 and 6, 22 points, and they're 1-6 and 3 in their last 10. That rounds out your standings right now. So, 30 games in, we've passed that quarter mark. Red Wings are still there. We don't have to play 700 hockey yet, but we're getting to that point where now you're starting to see a little bit of separation, Garrett. It's not by much, but the Red Wings have 30 games in. Most of the teams above them outside of Tampa have at least played 31 or 32 games. So it would behoove the Red Wings here this week with hosting the Flyers and then a back-to-back double dip with Montreal Friday and Saturday before hosting the Blues and before hosting the Blues on Monday. It would behoove the Red Wings to perhaps maybe say, let's pick up 3 games in a row, men, and get some points here and get back in this thing. It's interesting. As we're playing the Flyers team who we just didn't. I don't know what happened in that game against Philly the other night. They just didn't get off the bus. I don't know what the hell it was. But Garrett, it would behoove the Red Wings to kind of get their shit together here and get this thing going, because it's been frustrating to watch. And if it doesn't piss you off, I don't know what to tell you. But it would behoove them to get going. So, yeah. That's where we are right now in the standings. Garrett, any final thoughts before we head on out?
Happy we're back on, my friend.
Yes,
happy
sir.
that we're back at it. We're getting into the juicy part of the season here. We're getting into the meat and potatoes of the season, and I love it. And I appreciate everyone who's following and wants to be engaged with us.
Yes, we do appreciate you all. We did miss you here, and we're going to try to get back on a regular schedule here. Our fault there. So, yeah, next week, hopefully, maybe we can round Pocket up and have a 4-hour slugfest. No, I'm kidding. But it would be good to have Pocket on, talk about some junior hockey going into the World Juniors. That would be a lot of fun. So we'll try to get him on, see what we can do. And with that, we're going to head off for another week of hockey here, and hope you enjoy. The Red Wings do, as I mentioned, they're They had the Flyers at home on Wednesday, a double dip with Montreal Friday, Saturday, St. Louis on the 23rd. By the way, Grand Rapids is in Texas this week, Tuesday and Thursday. And then they'll host Milwaukee on Friday, while the Toledo Walleye are doing a double dip with the Wheeling Nailers. So there you go. So
Ooh.
yeah, it's going to be a fun time. So get down to Toledo. Check those games out. So for Don Tottingham, Garrett Kaloje, Raising the Banner, episode 13. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you all next week. Have a good one.
Yep.